Hello and welcome back to the Real Estate Regroup Show. I am your host, LJ Walker. Today we're going to talk about Joe Jackson. I wish they would do a movie or something on this man because I feel that his life is worth being studied because I have questions. I have curiosities, if you will, that I feel that a movie would properly address this. All right. To be honest, there should really be a movie on just about every single Jackson family member, not just Michael, not just the Jackson 5, but the whole family individually. But today I'm going to just focus on Joe Jackson. So let's start from the beginning. As many of us know, he's originally from Arkansas. In Arkansas, the weather there is not necessarily the most stablest, to say the least. They do have earthquakes, but not to the severe point as California and what he experienced when he was living in California that made him move to Las Vegas. So I really wanted to sort of focus on that a little bit more, right? Draw into that a little bit more. But I'm going to talk about him as well. So growing up in Arkansas, eventually I believe the family moved to Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana is where he actually went to high school. But he dropped out of high school because he wanted to pursue other interests, which is boxing, and then also he had a band called the Falcons, right? Now, he didn't marry Catherine until he was 21 years old. And as many of you know, he was actually married to someone else before he married Catherine. And he actually started to see Catherine before he got divorced from the first wife. That's another thing that not too many people talk about or know. Okay, so speeding things up, he and Catherine, they have about 10 kids. I know one was lost at birth, unfortunately, died at birth, unfortunately. But once the kids became famous, Motown moved them out to California. And they were living at Beaumont Drive in Beverly Hills back in 1970, right? But it wasn't until 1971 that he and his wife, Catherine, paid $250,000 for the property now known as Havenhurst, which is in Encino, California. It wasn't until, honestly, the late 70s, though, that we realized that Joe was beginning to have some money problems and he struggled to pay the mortgage. So there's several reasons why that was. First of all, the industry unfortunately exploited the Jackson 5. They did not really receive monetarily their full value. Motown kept the publishing rights. The royalties were very small, and they even controlled the touring, merchandise, and TV appearances. Motown pretty much kept the majority of that money. From my understanding, their earnings was only 2.5 to 3.5 of all of that. Okay, now, the expenses, the costumes, the traveling, the security, the cars, their schooling. Also, with the little bit of money that they had, Motown took that money to pay for it. Joseph Jackson himself, because he had limited schooling, he really didn't have any financial training, nor any training as an entertainment manager. As a matter of fact, he did not even read the contract that Motown gave him because they kind of said, take it or leave it. So he figured, well, he couldn't consult his lawyer because they wouldn't have come to an agreement. So I kind of understand why he didn't go back and say, let me call my lawyer, because of the way things were done. And then the fact that he did not have the education or the experience. All right. He really, unfortunately, after a while, he realized, wait a minute, you know what? We're really relying on Motown a little bit too much for our income. And unfortunately, they have way, way, way too much control. Okay. So that's one of the reasons that pushed them to leave Motown back in 1975. And when they left, even though they went on to another record company, they pretty much had to start all over again from scratch. Okay? And renegotiate their brand and all of these type of things. Now, on top of all of that, especially when they first started out with the new record company and everything, the record sales were actually low. It was the tours where they was actually making the money. So that is what propelled them, the Jackson Five, and then eventually Michael by himself, to be the main earners of the family and not so much Joseph. All right. But listen, Joseph is not totally innocent here. No, he's not. You see, it wasn't until the mid-70s that he started to have affairs, and he started spending money on other women. Okay? So he has all these children and a wife, and now he's messing around with other women. And then finally, there's one particular woman who he had a child with. So now we have 11 children. And he's paying child support to that one child. But even previous to when the child was born, he paid for the apartment for the child's mother to be closer to Havenhurst, where they live. You understand me? So with that being said, that chipped away at the money that he was making. Plus, you have to realize too, when they left Motown, Motown did sue them, and they were in court for 5 years. That's a very long time. Court costs was definitely piling up. So that's another reason why money was getting tight. He also made a lot of poor decisions that got the Jacksons sued. In addition to that, like there was something with Reverend Moon and all of that, promises of having concerts, I believe it was in Korea or what have you. So that again, that chipped away at how much money he was bringing in. And that's why eventually he had Michael, well, not necessarily buy him out, like all the way out. He and Catherine shared ownership of the house. It was 25-25 between the two of them, but Michael had 50% of the house. And so Michael pretty much saved the day and saved them from foreclosure, if you will, when it comes to the Havenhurst house. So moving forward, fast forward, as you guys know, you recall, there was the Northridge earthquake back in 1994. This was in California. So from the 1970s to the 1990s, that's about 20 years, Joe Jackson lived at the Havenhurst house, right? But that earthquake, that was a 6.7. That was much larger, much grander of a magnitude than what he experienced when he was living in Arkansas. So he was like, oh my God, I don't think I can survive this one. And that's why he left and moved to Las Vegas. Still married to Catherine, though. That's what's amazing. They never divorced. She did file twice, but she recalled the divorce, canceled it eventually. But they actually never divorced. They actually still stayed married, living in two different states. And I think that's quite amazing to me. That really is. And stayed married until he was about 92 years old. So that was 2000. Ooh, he died after Michael. So a few years after Michael. So, man, that was a long time that they stayed married, living in separate houses. And if I'm not mistaken, I know that Miss Jackson also bought another house in Calabasas, California. So she wasn't even always living in the Havenhurst house herself, but still, they're still married. You would think maybe she would pick up and move to Las Vegas or move in with Joseph. No, they were still married, living in two separate houses. So I thought that was quite interesting to learn and to know. I've heard of people honestly being married, living in two different places, but it's normally like the house next door or maybe a block away, but not in two separate states. All right. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you. You can, take on whatever lesson you want according to this, this story, another interesting story about the Jacksons. This time I focus more on the father. Let me know in the comments what you think. Would you ever consider something like this? Would you ever consider leaving a place and moving to another place? Or what actually would make you leave one place and move to another place? Number one. And number two, would you ever consider being married to a person but not living in the same house, not living in the same state? All right, drop your comments down below. Until next time, have a good night.